Okay, this is the introduction for lab number 7 on impulse and momentum. And something we know is that an impulse is going to be a force multiplied by a change in time. And if we were to have a constant force, then actually it would be the area under the force versus time graph. So it would be all this area right over there. Now, we also know that impulse is going to be equal to a change in momentum. And so what we're going to do in this lab is we're going to calculate impulse two ways. We're going to calculate it first using a force applied over some time, and then we're going to use it or calculate it as a change in momentum. So you're going to go ahead and pop open this lab, and it's just going to be a astronaut in deep dark space, and he's going to fire a fire extinguisher. And what's going to happen is he's going to go through two photo gates that are 10 meters apart. And what that's going to do is we can, I've got to shut that off, measure the force. We can measure for how long that force was applied for. So we can calculate impulse using force times a change in time. And then we can also calculate his change in momentum. He was initially at rest, and we can measure his speed right over there. And we can reset this and mess around with the mass and the forces a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back here, and you can kind of see that we are going to measure first the mass of Wally, and we know that his velocity beforehand was actually 0 before we fired the fire extinguisher, so that's pretty easy. Fired the extinguisher for 500 milliseconds, and just keep in mind that a millisecond is a thousandths of a second, so I do have you do some unit conversions right there. And we can calculate the impulse that way. Impulse is going to be equal to force multiplied by time. Then what we can do is we can say the distance between the photo gates was 10 meters. Again, convert the photo gate time to seconds as well. And then we can say, okay, distance is equal to rate times time, so we can calculate the speed afterwards. And then we can calculate his momentum. Momentum is just mass multiplied by velocity. Beforehand, it's actually going to be 0. And then finally, you can see how much it changed by. And I said, hey, were they equal to each other? And it turns out that, well, this is a simulation, so of course they are. Then I have you activate the fire extinguisher for a little bit longer and kind of repeat the process.